Hey guys, and welcome to Anchor of Truth. Today we are diving into chapter 25 in the book of Jubilees. So let's get started.
All right, guys, let's get started. Verse 1 of 25. And in the second year of this week, in this Jubilee, Rebekah called Jacob her son, and spake unto him, saying, My son, do not take thee a wife of the daughters of Canaan, as Esau thy brother, who took to him two wives of the daughters of Canaan, and they have embittered my soul with all their unclean deeds. For all their deeds are fornication and lust, and there is no righteousness with them, for their deeds are evil. And I, my son, love thee exceedingly, and my heart and my affection bless thee every hour of the day and watch of the night. And now, my son, hearken to my voice, and do the will of thy mother, and do not take thee a wife of the daughters of this land, but only of the house of my father and of my father's kindred. Thou wilt take thee a wife of the house of my father, and the Most High Elohim will bless thee, and thy children will be a righteous generation and a holy seed. And then spake Jacob to Rebekah his mother, and said unto her, Behold, mother, I am 9 weeks of years old, and I neither know nor have I touched any woman, nor have I betrothed myself to any, nor even think of taking me a wife of the daughters of Canaan. For I remember, mother, the words of Abraham our father, for he commanded me not to take a wife of the daughters of Canaan, but to take me a wife from the seed of my father's house and from my kindred. I have heard before that daughters have been born to Laban, thy brother, and I have set my heart on them to take a wife from amongst them. And for this reason I have guarded myself in my spirit against sinning or being corrupt in all my ways throughout all the days of my life. For with regard to lust and fornication, Abraham my father gave me many commands, and despite all that he hath commanded me, these 2 and 20 years my brother hath striven with me, and spoken frequently to me, and said, My brother, take to wife a sister of my two wives, but I refuse to do so as he hath done. I swear before thee, mother, that all the days of my life I will not take me a wife from the daughters of the seed of Canaan, and I will not act wickedly as my brother hath done. Fear not, mother. Be assured that I shall do thy will and walk in righteous uprightness, and not corrupt my ways forever.
Man, that's a that's a long way of saying that, right? I mean, he went
Yeah.
he tried to cover every aspect of that. I thought that was really cool the way he broke down each individual aspect or way you could look at that to let it be known for sure that he was not going to do that.
Well, he got to witness. He saw when and his brother Esau had taken the wives that Esau shouldn't have taken. I'm sure that he saw and heard from his parents their disapproval, and he saw how much it just hurt them.
Mm,
It wasn't necessarily they were mad; they were actually hurt at what Esau was doing. That Esau was doing his own thing, and I think this is a very intimate part of the story here with Jacob and his mother, where we get to see, like, hey, son, I love you so much, and he's like, Mom, don't worry, I'm not gonna do it. Okay, but
right.
like you said, it was kind of a long about way of saying, hey, don't worry, I'm not gonna. Hey, I don't even think about this woman, Mom. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think you guys were definitely going in the right direction there with, he's watching his brother go in error, and he's
Mhm.
watching his mom. She said she was embittered. So
Mm,
if he actually cares about his family, which apparently he does, he's gonna watch his mom and how it's affected her of what the brother's decision is. So he's like, why would I then go and cause her the same grief and strife? But also her reasoning was sound. The wives that he picked are unclean in their deeds and fornication and lust, and no righteousness is in them. And Jacob turns around and says, well, Mom, I'm trying to do all the righteous things, and I'm trying to live accordingly and
Mhm.
do the right thing. So they're setting forth a great divide between Esau and his situation and Jacob and his probably future situation. So there's a large chasm and divide between the two. So it's almost as if Jacob's like, well, of course I'm not doing that. That's so far from where I'm at. And he's going to talk a little bit more about his heart and his desire and what he's done to put himself in the right position, which is amazing and a great example for us. Hopefully we can get back to that example in our
right.
world today.
Mhm.
Right. All right, well, let's back up a little bit. Let's get to the big beginning here. There was a statement that she made that I thought was pretty interesting. So I did highlight that section you had here. You said here about her they have embittered my soul with all their unclean deeds, for all their deeds are fornication and lust. I thought that was really interesting the way that was phrased. For all their deeds are fornication and lust. It was like that's the driving force behind everything that they do is fornication and lust. I find that to be, well, honestly, I find it to be a lot like what we see today in America, you know. And there is no, it goes on to say, and there is no righteousness with them, for their deeds are evil. Their deeds being in parentheses, but I just thought that was really interesting to phrase that like that. For all their deeds are fornication and lust, right? It didn't talk about murder and strife and all this. It talks specifically about all their deeds are fornication and lust. In other words, this is, in my opinion, it's saying this is what everything stems from that they do that is evil is these things. What do you guys think?
Well, Kyle, so I just wanted to jump back in here is, whenever I was reading that verse, it sounds a bit obscure. We're like, there's no way. Like all day, every day, that's kind of the vibe we're getting is the direction that they were going, the what drove them, what they woke up in the morning was I need to dress this way. I need to put this kind of makeup on. My goal and purpose and intention is down this road of unrighteousness. And we see some of the details there. And immediately I started thinking of the Revelation 17, where it talks about the whore of Babylon, or the wicked woman in Babylon, and how that's prophetic. And so I actually wanted to read a verse here. It's in Revelation chapter 17, verse 4. It says, "The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abomination, the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and the earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of martyrs of Jesus." So I was reading that and really just kind of going in like, there, not to say that there's the same thing that's controlling these women as the same thing that's going to be with this situation in Revelation 17, but to see that persevere throughout history. This is the same pitfall that so many of the biblical characters fell into, and so many, like Kyle said, in our world today that we're falling into is clearly Esau is not commended for his decision here. Clearly, these two wives are not commended for their lifestyle. So why would we be doing anything to emulate that, or to even look like that in our lives, or to seek after that? Really, we should be seeking after a life like Jacob and what he's doing. So it's a really interesting dynamic that's showing up there, especially because this is clearly a problem way back when, and it's going to be a problem in the future, as Revelation 17 tells us.
Yeah, I kind of want to dig into those two words a little bit there. So fornication and lust.
Mhm.
Fornication is, when we think of these two things, we think, sorry about the camera shaking. When we think about these two words, we really think about the sexual aspect of it, right? That's what comes to mind, generally speaking. And if you look up those two definitions, you're going to find something very much along those same lines, right? Lust. Let's see, very strong sexual desire, right? But lust can also be a passionate desire for something. Like you can lust for power,
Mhm.
right? You can lust for riches. And fornication is essentially adultery. And I've kind of gone into this a few times with some people, and I've gotten some pushback on it. But if you really dig into what is adultery, right? I mean, even the tribes of Israel were guilty of um, of fornication. How is it? How is a tribe? How is a nation guilty of fornication? An individual can be. How is a nation? Right. So there's got to be more to it than that. If you
Mhm.
really look into adultery, yes, it absolutely adultery, fornication, and lust can all three be applied to sexual type things, and that's how they're most commonly used. But if you really dig deep, you'll find that it has a lot to do with breaking a covenant,
Mhm.
going against what you are covenanted to be part of. Um, going above and beyond what you are supposed to be content with, right? You have this, but you're lusting after this. You're fornicating. You're going outside of what you have already established as a covenant. You're fornicating outside of that. So anyway, those are the things that I see there. So this fornication and lust, for all their deeds are fornication and lust. To me, that simply is saying that, yes, I'm sure there's a lot of sexual stuff with that, and probably so from the women, trying to attract whatever they could get for whatever purpose that they were trying to fulfill. But all of them were against the Most High in his ways, is what I'm getting out of that. What do you guys have to say?
No, I agree, and that's why I said that's partially with that Revelation 17 reference. It goes into the earth's abomination, so it definitely allows for and is inclusive of the thoughts that go outside of, the intimacy aspect of it. Of, hey, you're outside of the confines of a covenant, or outside of the confines of what was been established, then yeah, that's considered fornication. And when we know the people of Canaan, they clearly lusted after that land because they were given a different land and they decided not to take it. So we can go back and look at some of our earlier Jubilee videos of the land being divided out by Noah, and we see them saying, but we like this land, even though we're given something else. So they even in that aspect from Canaan, that early on, we already see that those as a people group, we see those things popping up.
Yep.
And guys, I'd like to go back to just to kind of drive that home a little bit more with where I think Jacob's mom's taking this, Rebecca. We go back and we look at the word embittered. I did a little quick search on it, and it's, not only does it have to deal with being angry, but also some other words to describe that is alienated, disillusioned, disaffected, to make someone bitter, resentful, to bring about unhappiness. I mean, there's so many different words to describe probably what she was feeling. I'm sure she was angry, but I'm sure that when she's saying this is going into this is deeper than just I'm angry at him. Mm-hmm. I'm mad at him right now. I think that when it goes into what you guys are saying, the biggest thing is, I think what she's telling her son is, I am so disappointed in your brother right now. It's embittered me so much. I am so disappointed in what he is doing. And that's why when she starts talking about, like you guys are saying, the fornication and the lust, and going into what, a lot of the different definitions of that, from a mother's heart, she's just trying to really relate to her son, like, this has affected me very deeply. And so I think that her words in this are affecting, Jacob's listening. He's hearing his mother and what she's saying. And so I just want to add a little bit more into, I think, to what she's trying to relate to her son.
I like that, Joe. That when you brought that up again, it reminded me. It sparked something else in me. Like when we eat something bitter, mm-hmm. right? That bitter taste in our mouths, it shows on our face, right? Like mm-hmm. It puts a bad taste in our mouth when we eat something bitter. It's not.
Unless you're into that type of thing. I mean, it's
I don't know. It just brings about an idea of, essentially every time he's brought up, it brings about this mm-hmm. to her, right? Like that you can physically see, like just the name on her lips is bitter. It's, I don't know. Okay.
Well, think about this. We were never, I don't think, unless I'm wrong, somebody tell me, I don't think we're ever given the names of Esau's wives. So even they're just unless we are, if somebody out there, if you're, in the comment section, tell us. I don't know if we are ever given his names of his wives or not, but that would make sense. She's like, I am so bitter right now. Or it's like, I'm not even going to speak their names. All you're going to know is those women that he took, I don't want anything to do with them. Mm-hmm. So
I think we are. I don't remember where, but I think we are, and it may even be here in Jubilees. I just can't remember exactly where. So okay. I don't know. We can look into it.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay.
Well, I don't know for sure. I just something in me kind of RCA dogged me a little bit. When you said
I saw Jonathan doing the same thing. He started doing that. He was flipping through the Rolodex in his brain.
Yep.
He's trying.
He's trying.
All right, so down here in verse 2, what about this here? I just thought I don't know. I highlighted some things that I thought were interesting. So what do you guys have to say about this? By all means, if you got something else, bring it up. But in verse 2 it says, "And my affection bless thee every hour of the day and watch of the night." It's an interesting phrase, and we know that there's night watches, but it's expressed differently. Every hour of the day and watch of the night. Is there something that we can glean from this historically, or what have you, or even spiritually from this? The we have a reference to every hour of the day, not every hour of the day and night, but every hour of the day and watch of the night. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. You guys have anything about that?
No, I just think again. I think it's just it's a mother's love. She's just driving again all the points that she's making. She's really driving it home to her son how much she loves him, and
Sure.
she's like, "Hey, even through the watches of the night, when you're sleeping, my love is still there, blessing you from my heart."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, just from a historical context, like, is there a? I know it doesn't have really much to do with the story or what's going on here. I think you're spot on with that. But what is there something historically about a watch of the night? Like, are there times that people would get up in the middle of the night for certain things? Um, just your average person, not some guard on a tower somewhere, right? Switching out and that sort of thing. Is there something that was to be done in the middle of the night? It was that a normal thing? I know we've had discussions about waking up in the middle of the night and praying and things like that. I don't know. I didn't know if there was anything biblically or historically accurate to represent what's being actually said here in this phrase of watch of the night. I don't know. That was all. I'm sorry.
Well,
It's just curiosity.
I think with what you're saying there, if I could pull something out of that, would be that the watch of the night, to me personally, if we were going to attribute it to anything scriptural, would be going back to the temple, the tabernacle, and the practices
Hmm.
of they would have their different responsibilities and rules that they would have for the nighttime. They had to keep the fire going, and
Right.
they said be prepared so that way you don't look dumb whenever the high priest or the priest comes in and then you're falling asleep. Always be on watch, be prepared, and have that time set aside. So I did read it originally and think maybe it's a little prophetic to who Jacob is going to be and the system that's going to be set up. But to lock it in from just that single verse, we have to get some more context. So good thing we have the rest of these scriptures. And what I'm going to do is actually show you in verse 3, and it's going to be way down at the bottom of that column there. And it says, "Thou wilt take thee a wife from the house of my father, and the Most High Elohim will bless thee, and thy children will be a righteous generation and a holy seed." She's speaking something over him that kind of has to do with that tabernacle priesthood, that conversation of, I know that if you do it this way, the correct way, the Most High will bless you and your children, and you will have a righteous generation, which is the most important part and the basis for any kind of faith walk. So what she's doing is she's causing the mirror to be pointed at him and saying, hey, when you look back in the mirror, you want to see this. And in order to see this, this is the actions that you're going to take. And that's just really cool because she was part of, if we go back in a couple of chapters, she's been a part of these conversations kind of behind the scenes, like, hey, go
Mhm.
talk to Rebecca. Why aren't you talking to Isaac? Go talk to Rebecca. She's the one who heard about the dream. She's the one who talked to the angel. She's the one who's kind of talking with Abraham, not behind the scenes, but having this little extra conversation to keep things moving and grooving. And now she's saying some stuff really strongly worded promises and goals for Jacob. So I think it's really cool to see that play out there.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. So
Mhm.
that's where my line of thought was going, and I wanted to see if anybody was seeing that besides me. So now I have a question for you guys.
Uh-oh.
Mhm.
If there's times of the watches, temple, tabernacle, all that stuff, right? The people doing different tasks and things at the tabernacle. They had their nightly watches. It makes me wonder, even though tabernacle's not in place yet, if maybe there were some activities happening from dad. where mom had to get up in the middle of the night and tend to helping get dad ready for whatever it was he was doing, kind of thing.
Possibly.
I don't know. You guys,
Possible.
you guys tell us in the comments what you guys think about that. I just thought that was a neat what if. So
Yeah. Speaking of the comments, if you've already lit up the comments with Esau's the names of his wives, I had to go look it up for myself.
Oh, you cheated.
So I cheated. I used Google. But it's kind of interesting. This is actually from a midrash, and it says, in brief, Esau's 3 wives are given more context and background by the rabbis than in the Torah. Esau's first 2 wives, Ada and Judith, are described as adulterous and idolatrous. Ada, also called Basemath, is linked with harlotry. I can't say the word.
harlotry.
There we go, harlotry, as her name is linked with jewelry, and perfume. Judith, also called Oholibamah, is similarly linked by her name to idolatry and is also described as adulterous. And then it says, and the rabbis disagree on the name of Esau's, as the nature of Esau's 3rd wife, Mahalat. And I think this is actually from the Ishmael. I think this is one of the daughters of Ishmael or something like that. And it says, again, through the interpretation of her name, the rabbis link her both to Esau's repentance and alternatively to his fall further into evil. So 3rd wife wasn't so bad, but the first 2 wives, they actually linked to adultery and stuff like that. So, but yes, we do have names for all 3 wives. So if you were in the comments and you were lighting it up, thank you so much for that. But I was like, I got to find out right now because when both of y'all were doing this going, it's like, they must say it somewhere.
Very cool.
So anyway,
very cool.
I'm glad we cleared that up. I feel so much better now.
You can sleep easy.
I can sleep better, yeah.
All right. So the next thing I wanted to bring up over here was in verse 4. So let me read this first. Okay. So he says, I am 9 weeks of years old. So this dude's holding out longer than 40-year-old virgin. You know what I'm saying? Like he's been holding strong for quite a while. But depending on how you're looking at this, I just want to make sure that there wasn't a concern of there being something that was conflicting in here. So it says, I am 9 weeks of years old. But then when you scroll down here to verse 8, it says, and despite all that he hath commanded me, these 2 and 20 years, my brother has striven with me. So there's not a conflict there of age. This is a reference of he is 9 weeks of years old. But for 22 years, he's been striving with his brother. So they've been kind of butting heads on this for the last 22 years. So I just want to make sure I clarified that. So what do you guys have to say about this 9 weeks of years old here?
Yeah, it definitely makes him a little bit older than, at least in my mind. You know how we always like paint a picture of what we think the story was looking like and who and what they might have looked like at the time. 63 is that's a pretty good number. There's no one here on the screen that has reached 63, and this guy apparently, Mr. Jacob, he's lived righteously. He's done everything according to the rules and regulations of the household and the scriptures that he's aware of, and he has not known a woman. And that's an interesting detail, and what it is it's setting him up for Israel. It's setting him up. You know, it's no wonder God's like, Abraham was awesome, and you're the reason that this seed has been continuing to get to a Jacob. Not that Abraham lost any credibility, but Abraham's greatest blessing, Abraham's greatest achievement in life is to watch his grandson, watch Jacob grow up and become Israel, to become the promise, to be the nation, right? To be the people that gets to receive the covenant and all the fullness of that. And of course, it's not when I say the fullness of what happened so far at this time, but 63 years, that's a long time. I haven't touched 63. No, like I said, no one on the screen has touched 63, and we have not done these expectations.
Yeah.
We have not met,
I'm 10 years away from 63. So
you just had to put that in there. I was gonna let you live. You could have been 30. That's, no one's checking.
I don't know about 30. Maybe like I want to see a birth certificate on that one. Driver's
It's the
license,
one in
please.
crayon, like for the baseball league. I am 8.
So yeah, he goes into it, man. He says, "Look, man, I'm 63 years old, and I haven't done any of this." And he goes through that long dissertation explaining to his
Mhm.
mother that he's not known a woman. Uh, Hank, I thought this was funny. Let me pull this up. Where's my highlighter? There it goes. Nor have I betrothed myself to any, nor even think of taking me a wife. Like, Mom, I haven't even thought about considering one of these women as a wife. Right.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. That's just like a son to do that. I hadn't even thought about it, you know?
Well, one of the things too with this is I look at the age of what people lived in versus now. So Jacob lives to be 147 years old. So I wonder if 63 was the 33 of the day. I don't know. I mean, if we were to backtrack that to the average lifespan now of 75 years and all that stuff, that 63, then you still look good. I mean, we get the whole, story of him, and it's like, hey, 147, that's not too shabby. You know what I mean? I mean, Dad lived to see Abraham lived to be 175. So, and we know at the age of 75, Abraham's out there leading the army in the battle.
Right.
When people today are kind of averaging when they're passing on to the other side, this man's out there fighting kingdoms at 75.
Right.
So 63 here, we can't look at it like a 63-year-old today.
Right.
Right.
They're probably looking like Jonathan at 63 back then, vigor and just like, yeah, let's do it. I'm ready to take a wife, Mom. Let's go.
I think there's a lot that we can pull from this too. He's still got this relationship with his mother at this age, right? That they're having these kind of conversations. It's not, I'm an adult, I can handle my own stuff. No, there's a lot going on here. I mean, he's respecting his mother. He's honoring his mother and his father, being mindful of their ways, the commandments, the things that they've taught. He's still interacting with them on a regular basis, that sort of thing. This is a way of life for him, and I think it's awesome in Jubilees here where we get the understanding of his age here, because I mean, maybe it is. I don't remember it. Speaking to his age when he goes into his becoming Israel and all that stuff. Like I don't remember that. I mean, I'm not saying it's not in the scripture. I don't remember that being in the 66 account.
You mean how old he was when God changed his name to Israel?
Yeah. And so this is before that.
Yeah.
Right. So, and he's 63 here. I don't know why. I just had it in my mind that he was a much younger man when that happened. Right.
I want to say off the top of my head, I think he was in his 80s when that took place.
Wow. Maybe so.
Yeah.
Good thing we have a resident pastor.
Because when I'm trying to remember when he meets up, when he gets when him and Joseph get back together, I want to say that when Pharaoh speaks to him, doesn't he tell Pharaoh that he's like 110 or 120 or something at that time? Somewhere in there.
I believe you're right.
Because when we go back and we study that out, I think for the Egyptians back then, anyone who lived to be at least 120 years old, they considered blessed or something like that. So I think that's why Pharaoh even asked him, how old are you? Well, for that reason, knowing. And so we know that Jacob lives to be 147 years old, though.
All right.
Well, one more point down.
I want to say it's somewhere in his 80s or something like that when his name's changed. But I could be wrong.
Got some more work for you guys in the comment section.
Yeah, the comments say, you guys are awesome. I'm telling you right now, you guys are quick. So please help us out on that one. Please help Kyle out. He needs all the help he can get.
For just $2.
Bless his heart.
What you got, Jonathan?
No, yeah. So what one other point that I wanted to make about him not taking a wife and that kind of conversation is when we look at the very end of verse 4, it says, I betrothed myself, or nor have I betrothed myself to any, nor even think about taking a wife of the daughters of Canaan. So there's an important caveat there. He didn't say I never thought of taking a wife. He just says I never thought of taking one of them as a wife.
Facts.
So there was something important there. It's not like he's some weird, outlier of humanity where he's like, oh, the lust of the eyes doesn't exist in my world, and I'm just some, he was a normal guy living a normal life, and he just knew better not to take the wife of Canaan. And how we know that is in verse 5. It goes to say, "For I remember, mother, talking to you, the words of Abraham. You know who Abraham is, our father. For he commanded me not to take a wife of the daughters of Canaan." So he's just literally regurgitating the command that was given to him. That this is a very early example of keep the scriptures on our mind, meditate on them day and night so that we can repeat them and use them. And I'm not saying what Abraham said was scripture, but what Abraham said was commanded to him. So he said, Abraham told me not to take a wife from Canaan. All I know is I'm not taking a wife from Canaan. I don't know who it's going to be. It's just not going to be one of them. I know that much for sure. But he says, but take for me a wife from the seed of my father's house and from my kindred. So why I bring that up and say it's interesting to me is we get a little bit more of an understanding. He's not a weird guy who doesn't, like women or something like that. It's just I'm not taking one of those as a wife. And then when he sees Esau do it, Esau literally now has gone against that command. Now, I wonder, was it commanded after Esau did that or prior to Esau? Because then that would be even more reason for Esau's estrangement of you just did what Abraham said not to do. And you made mama sad. So this is double strike against you here. Where, here Jacob's like, I'm doing what Abraham said because the promise, because the covenant, because I know if I don't do it, Esau's not doing it. I'm the only way. I'm the only path to righteousness left. If it's not me, then it's no one. I have to do this. So he's taking a very strong stance here, and he's really putting the weight of the family on his shoulders. And it's like, I'm not even the oldest, but I'm going to do this. I know this isn't going to work out the way that Esau or even Isaac. Remember, Esau was the one that Isaac loved. So this ain't even working on the way Isaac originally thought it was. But through that, I'm gonna walk this out in a way that I know that I'm supposed to. And what we also kind of maybe understand a little bit, and I'm not saying this is right, but it's interesting to see like, well, he's 63 and he's not supposed to take a wife of Canaan. Where are all the other options? Like it's like almost like I have to go way out of my way to go find Laban and go work way over here to go find another woman. I wonder if it truly was a situation where the Canaanites and the Canaanite women were a majority of people in that community. It was literally a small group of Abraham and his smaller family, because it seems like it wasn't as big and as grand when Abraham's taken all the armies and all the people and winning all the wars and bringing all the people with him. It seems like they've narrowed down a little bit. And if that's the case, and they're in foreign land. Remember, we were talking about Abimelech, and they were like, "Hey, you can't have this well, you can't have this well." They were literally getting kind of pushed to the edge of the camp. And everything, you can have that area over there. So I do kind of play that option out of there's just not even option, and he's got to wait to figure out the right time and the right place because, well, every Canaanites are here. Well, where's somebody else? She's like, I guess you can go back all the way to Laban. It wasn't like Laban lived next door, not from the story that I remember reading. So it's an interesting thought process there of like how this all plays out.
I wonder if that was part of it. That's interesting you brought that up. I wonder if that was part of it. So when they were driven out, right, when the oath was made, the statement was made, "You are mightier than we," essentially, right? I wonder if that was a reference to his numbers and all that stuff. I wonder if that's why they continued on the path that they were on, and that became a way of life more so of the lust and fornication and sexual type things, because they were trying to become great in the land, like multiplying. They were multiplying their seed, right? Trying to anyway. I wonder. I don't know. I do. I thought this was cool in what you brought up in verse 4. It says, "I neither know nor have I touched a woman, any woman." Right? So, I mean, I look at this as, I guess, in modern day, not only have I not done the deed, like I ain't even made out with somebody, right? I'm not holding hands with anybody. I'm not, whatever. I'm not. That is not anything that I have partaken in any capacity physically. Not only have I not done the deed, but I haven't done anything that would lead up to the deed, or promised that I would do things like that, or even thought about it. So he's covering all bases there. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the reason why I kind of go down that trail of thought a little bit is in verse 6, it says, I have heard before. Like I have heard is like a very passive way of saying there's a possibility, and I heard it before, which is prior. I have heard prior that the daughters have been born to Laban, thy brother. So he's kind of given, hey mom, don't you have a brother? And he's got some daughters. Does that qualify? Is this in the right keeping of what Abraham was talking about? And you could see he's not asking it as a question, but I wonder if in his head he's like, I mean, that's an option, right? Because everything else that's kind of here apparently isn't an option, or it's not. Maybe he was listening to God in that moment and was saying, none of these people here are for you. Not that any of them are wrong or bad or not a possibility, but he was like, these aren't for you. There is something specific. There's a date and a time and a place, and wait for me to guide you and to lead you. So
Yeah, and real quick, speaking on a date and a time and a place. So I've been looking up some things that are interesting here. So when we talked about earlier about when he became Israel, according to the sources I'm looking at, he was probably about 97 years old, so a little bit older than I thought. The interesting thing here is said that Jacob would have been in his 70s when he married Leah and Rachel, but he lived to be 147. So in terms of the lifespan of a man's life today, Jacob biologically would be more about 38 years old or so when he married.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so it is very interesting that in his 70s, he's like, I'm getting married today. Hey, oh, it's the wrong woman. Let me work longer and get the one I want. But anyway, that was my guess.
There.
I guess my guess was kind of on that it would be like in his 30s, in the time span of what we live now. Right. So that would be kind of trippy to meet him in person today and go, hey, what are you like, 36, 30? Oh, no, I'm 72. What?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah. So anyway, just saw some interesting facts. Just want to throw some things out on that one. But so when we're reading this in our eyes today, we're thinking, oh my God, dude, you're in your 60s and you didn't even get married till you're in your 70s. It's like,
right.
But if 70 was a 38, hey man, of that day, why not?
More power to you, brother.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you brought up something that as you were speaking, I saw that I thought this was really, really cool. So going back to what you were saying in verse 5, and I like the way you emphasize that too. For I remember, mother, the words of Abraham, our father, right? Like, so he's putting emphasis on this. For I remember, like, hey, I get it. For I remember, mother, the words of Abraham, our father, for he commanded me not to do this. So what he's expressing here is he's not only saying, not only have I not done any of these things, and he goes to the nth degree of breaking down what he hasn't done. Not only is he doing that, he's saying, hear me in what I'm saying. I'm letting you know right now that those words live in me. I took what was told and I live by those words, and I understand. I heard him fully. I understand it fully, and I apply it fully to my life. Right? I think that's really cool. And then he goes on to quote it, to quote what was told to him to prove it. So he is able to express exactly. He knows the word that was given to him, right?
Yep.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah, and where we go with that is verse 7, where it says, and for this reason, right? So now he's saying, okay, now the reason why, so he's literally, like I said, systematically breaking this down. The reason why I have guarded myself in my spirit against sinning or being corrupted in all my ways. So that goes into that conversation where it's like when you're walking in the spirit, it's an opposition of the flesh. So he's literally telling her, in my spirit, I've guarded myself, and which has kept me from sinning in the flesh. And of course, Abraham only gave him one command. Of course not. We go at the very end of chapter 7. It says, Abraham, my father, gave me many commands. So he's not just okay, here's the one golden rule. Don't marry one of these women and everything will be great. And he's like, no. Abraham gave me many commands. This
Right.
is the one we're talking about now. So I'm recalling this one and addressing this one because that's the current issue. But don't forget, as I grow and I do get married or I do walk these paths out, as I do start to work for Laban, I have many commands from Abraham that's going to help and guide me through these scenarios that are going to have lots of implications and lots of problems for me. And this is going to be very difficult to go through this. Good thing I had an Abraham in my life to walk me through some of this, to show me in a good example, but also to give me some commands that are going to lead me in the right direction and to be that strong backbone I may not have had on my own. I can go back and say, I'm referring to Abraham here. If he's anybody, which I know he is, what he says has to be true and it has to be good and edifying for my life. So I'm going to go back to that and walk that out. So yeah, he gave him many commands, not just the one about marrying the Canaanite women.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it.
Mhm.
All right. So right here below, where you below 7, verse 8 here, it says, and we kind of brought this up earlier, and despite all that he had commanded me these 2 and 20 years, my brother has striven with me and spoken frequently to me and said, my brother, take to wife a sister of my 2 wives. And he refused to do so and all that. So question, 22 years, he's having dialogue with his brother. So they're kind of going back and forth on this. So I mean, are they at odds now, or is it simply just, this is still just brothers dealing with brother stuff, or is this, have they parted ways already? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think in this case, of course, brothers are going to be brothers, and these two are about as opposite as all get out.
Right.
So you have the one who's absolutely doing everything in his power to displease his parents, to displease God, and you have the other one that's walking in righteousness. I mean, we can see just the conversation he's having with his mother here. He's like, "Hey, mom. Hey, by the way, mother, all these things I've remembered from granddad. Okay." So don't be worried and that I'm going to do something that's going to be dumb. He says, for 63 years of my life, I've been holding tight, so we're good. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we're good here. So I think it's important that it does bring us, despite all that he hath commanded me these 2 and 20 years, my brother has striven with me and spoken frequently to me and said. And so we have what we have here is the influence of Big Brother. Hey man, what you waiting on, dog? You 63 years old. Go take you some wives, man.
It's great over
He's
here, I
like,
promise.
yeah. Like, he's like, what
Misery
you doing,
loves
bro?
company, don't it?
I've already married 3 women. I'm having the time of my life. What you waiting on? It's like he's saying, hey, even though my brother who's doing wrong, who's been frequently speaking to me about this for 22 years, he says, don't worry about it. Everything's cool, Mom. I've got this under control. Me and God, we're good. And don't worry, I'm gonna do the right thing here, despite what my older brother is doing at the time.
Right.
Yeah, and the word in there is striven. That's the word that I keyed in on because that's going to change the dynamic of what's going on here. I think that they've been in opposition from the date of the alleged deceit or shifting of the birthright with the soup and all that. There's been a problem between them. And
Well,
striven, one of the definitions there is struggle or fight vigorously.
Hey, look, these 2 guys apparently been going at it since the womb. Remember?
Yeah, that's true.
2 natures wrestling. They were wrestling inside the womb. So this was before birth, man. They were going at it.
Right. So yeah, but because of that word striven in there, that's where I kind of get in. It's like, hey, you need to be like me, and you're just sitting at home and you're weird, like almost like a patronizing type of attitude toward him of, hey man, I'm out here, I'm ruling the world. I'm big brother Esau, I've got wives, and apparently back then especially, wives meant success, children meant, future generations. How are you how are you Abraham's seed and you're going to continue on if you don't even have a wife, so you clearly ain't got no kids, so the promise has been 0% fulfilled. I could see Esau digging in that wound a little bit, putting salt in the wound of, oh, daddy's favorite kid. Now look at you. You ain't got no wife, no kids. What are you going to do now? Why don't you come over here on the dark side? Why don't you come over here and see how I'm living? I promise you, I can get you some sisters and you can have all the babies you want. And then you can meet God's promise. And what more than the enemy to give you 9 truths and a lie? He's going to give him all the truths of the covenant, all the truths of the promise with one lie in there. You have to do it this way. You have to adjust a little bit from the straight and narrow to get to it, but you will ultimately get to it by man's means and by man's ways. And we see that play out tons of times throughout Scripture. Not to do that. Abraham and Sarah, uh, Elizabeth and Zachariah, you're like, hey, these guys are old. This doesn't even make sense. And they're like, but God said to do it that way. So that's the right way to do it. And Jacob has the wherewithal to say, I'd rather strive with you for 22 years than to strive with God for 22 years, because my people in the future are going to be 40 years in the desert. I'm not going to be 40 years in the desert with God. Me and God are going to walk together instead of walking separate.
That's right. You know, and if I was Jacob, you know what I'd say to Esau every time he was striven with me? I'd get me a bowl of lentil soup and go, how's that birthright tasting right now, big bro?
Oh, that's
How's that
so
birthright
wrong.
tasting right now, big bro?
That's so wrong.
Oh man, but you know, one of the things that when I look at Jacob, the word that comes to mind is patience. Yeah.
We hear about the patience of Job, but we don't really hear about the patience of Jacob, do we?
Hey man, 63 years old, still still doing the right thing. That's some patience involved in that.
That is a big thing. Now, I don't see it that Esau was necessarily doing everything he could to go against mom and dad. Honestly, I think he submitted to his flesh.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I see it. That he just simply submitted to his flesh, and as I kind of said in jest earlier, misery loves company. So I don't know. It's kind of hard knowing. It's kind of hard for some people that's not living righteously to look at somebody who is living righteously. They typically despise those kind of people, and they think they know why. Outwardly, they think, "Oh, you think you're better than me," but honestly, it's an outward expression of what they're feeling on the inside, which is they know that they goofed up, and rather than make things right, rather than repent, rather than change, they continue living in that flesh, living in that sin, and mock those who are not, because they have made their choice. And it's just easier to do that, and it would and a lot of times they want to corrupt those that are living righteously, so that the excuse is gone, so that I no longer have someone looming over me, right? I mean, as we're growing up as children, who was it that convinces their people to start drinking, doing drugs, having premarital sex, doing all these things? People's friends, right? Right. So somebody goofed up, and then they want to go tell everybody about it, brag about it, and, oh, you're not doing this, you're not part of the clique, you're not better than me. Let me make fun of you, and then draw them right in.
Right.
It's sad.
Oh yeah. Well, and what's his name? Esau's nickname was Aerosmith because he kept telling Jacob to walk this way.
I'm done with you. Okay, and so then anyway, in verse 9, he goes on to tell mom, after all of those things have been said, he says, I swear before thee, mother, that all the days of my life I will not take me a wife and do all that stuff, right? And then he comforts her at the end of that, and he said in verse 10, and he says, fear not, be assured that I shall do thy will and walk in uprightness and not corrupt my ways forever. That is awesome right there. Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting because it's a blanket statement. I will not corrupt my ways forever. So he didn't say we would kind of make that convert to in today's words as, oh, this guy was perfect, he never sinned. He says, I will not corrupt my ways. So the way that I live, the leader of my life of following, well, at the time, the Elohim Most High, he said, I will follow him in all my ways. Along the way, I'm going to trip, fall, and get a bruised knee. I'm going to sin. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to fall to the flesh and make mistakes. But my ways will not be corrupted. My ways will always be after the Father. And that's the difference that we read in Scripture. There's so many times that we were like, oh, Zechariah and Elizabeth were perfect. Oh, so-and-so was perfect. And that's an English translation of a word that doesn't mean like perfect by the standard of 0% sin. It means perfect in the way of I'm following God in his prescribed ways, and God in his prescribed ways has a day of atonement, meaning in his prescribed ways, there is room to mess up because we are all sinning and we live in a fallen world. So his ways are perfect that allows for us to be imperfect, which will ultimately put us back in perfection with him because of that atonement, because of that high priest role. And lovely, awesomely, amazingly for us, we have Yeshua acting as the perfect high priest, where we have constant availability of atonement, where we can be perfect in the Father's eyes because of that role and that action. So walking upright always or never failing doesn't mean you don't sin. It does mean that you continue to keep your eyes on the prize and you're walking with all earnesty and in truth and in spirit toward the Father in the ways that he's instructed us.
Jonathan, that was amazing, brother. Now, for you guys that are joining us in our study here, you are not going to want to miss next week. It is going to be amazing. So we will see you then next time for part 2 of chapter 25 in the book of Jubilees. God bless.
Shalom.